Well, I knew what I didn't want to do, which was make another acoustic record, which was great 6 years ago as far as the need to do that, and it fulfilled really a long-standing urge. But with this one, I wanted to get back to making something that was informed by the power of the riff, and that I wanted that to be the foundation, were these blues-based riffs. I don't want to say, be careful how I articulate blues, but utilizing like blues scales, pentatonic scales, and whatnot to as a vocabulary for the essence of these riffs, so that I didn't go too far into like metal territory, which is something that Alter Bridge tends to lean on more. Yeah, I wanted to make a rock and roll record, loud guitars, and just kind of do what I guess what I'm known for over the last few decades. And it was good to get back and start swimming in that stream again. The record was recorded in Orlando, Florida, with my partner in crime, Michael Basquette, at his studio. So I think we recorded, it was around this time last year, around the fall of 2023. As far as the musicians go, it was the good friends, Tim Turnier and Zia Udine. And now Zia, and they both were my rhythm section on the previous two solo records. But Zia and I go way back. We started playing together. Hard to believe we're coming up on, 40 years ago. We started playing bands together and we were just kids. And so that's my longest standing musical relationship. And so it's always good to get back in the saddle with him. He's a ferocious drummer, and Tim's amazing. He's a great musician, and he's also my manager. So, he checks a few of the boxes off. Man who wears many hats. It's a delicate dance. Yeah. I think for me, I was raised on classic rock, so that's always going to be in my DNA. But yeah, at the same time, I still want it to be contemporary. I don't want to just regurgitate something that's already been done better than I'm ever going to be able to do it. So I want to try and take it and kind of put my own spin on it and bring it into this era. And there are a number of ways to do that. But one of the big components is the sound, and that's where I feel like Elvis or Michael Basquette, the producer, is very helpful. He has that same goal. He loves all the classic stuff, and he loves those sonic hallmarks, but he also wants to bring it into the present. Yeah, that was, especially now that this is more of a hard rock record, the lines were blurred a little more.
Yeah.
So there was like with the ballad, with Eternal Lullaby, I actually brought that to Alter Bridge a few years ago, and what happened is we just had so many ballads. It's only a finite amount of spots for ballad in that context, so we didn't use it. So I wanted to make sure that it saw the light of day. So I felt like it was appropriate on this record. But yeah, that's a great question, because it's like, when you're using the similar formula, then how do you know where does it go? And a lot of it for me boils down to knowing the language I'm speaking musically, and what is the vocabulary, what are those notes, and that goes back to that pentatonic based, blues based, and even harmonically, the kinds of additions I'm adding to the chords. I might not use. I'll use a minor seventh here and there. I'm not going to do that with Alter Bridge, because that gets a little too expensive in that realm. Alter Bridge is more, a lot of detuned, heavy, chugging, and almost more. Rhythms are different. The rhythms are straighter. Some of this stuff swings. I think that's another big part of it. Is it's got a pocket and a groove that we don't explore that with Alter Bridge. Well, I definitely went into that one knowing what I wanted to do. Most of the time on records I improvise, but I hurt my hand. I had it's called a I always forget what it's called. It involves my ulnar nerve. It's a long story. So I've been dealing with that. So I really wanted to make sure when I went in to record these solos, I kind of had I had a roadmap. I knew where it was going. So a few days before, would improvise and then just kind of piece together the parts I liked. Really no different than what I would do in the studio. But I've basically got like a rough sketch of what I'm going to do, so I don't have to wear my hand down as much. And if I remember correctly, we just went in and just knocked it out. Just did a few takes and put it together, and we were kind of off to the races. But it's definitely, it's a bit of a tip of the hat to Ritchie Blackmore as far as that intro part. And the scales I'm using if I'm not mistaken, I might be using the 5th degree of like harmonic minor on that one. So it's a little expensive. Yeah, that's the secret sauce right there. But I'm going to tell you the secret sauce because everyone should have one of these pedals. It's called Argo, and I found it at Chicago Music Exchange. I went in there, I have some friends there, and I was like, I need a really good fuzz. Something I love Gary Clark Jr. And I'm like, I really like the sounds he's getting, and so they had this pedal there, the Argo pedal, and now I've been asked that question so many times by other guitar players, and I'm giving away the secret. But it's such a great pedal. It doesn't drop in volume. Like a lot of times fuzzes will kind of drop in volume. It's a whole thing, but this one just sits spot on. Get the Argo pedal, kids.
And the price has just gone up in eBay.
Yeah, exactly right. They're not that bad. I think they're under a couple $100. My go-to were my signature guitars, and fresh out of the box. And I'm not just saying that. I swear. A bunch of my guitars were in storage and because I've got multiple rigs, so some of them we just couldn't ship, and so I had a few in boxes, and I took them out, strung them up with the strings I like with my Diodarios, and that was it. And really most of the record was done on this one black signature guitar. And didn't have a scratch on it when we took it out of the box. But by the time we finished the record, there were plenty of dings. So it's got its battle wounds now. And then I think I had like a hand. I used the green. I had a green one as well that was like kind of a prototype that I used on some of the altered tunings.
Right.
But other than that, it's that black signature guitar. Straight into my Diesel Paul amp. And that was it. Like I didn't use, like on the second solo record, I had all this vintage gear I was playing. I had my Fender, my 58 Fender Deluxe, and like a 58 335, and all my great the wonderful thing that you get from vintage gear and that mojo. But with this, I just kept it very simple and used basically what I'm going to use live. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of that was Elvis. Elvis has he just got great ears. He's a great producer. He can do it all, and his engineer Jeff as well. But we were very adamant about making sure that it wasn't overproduced. And we started kind of trying to go down that road a few records ago, even with Alter Bridge. So it's all about getting a really good drum sound and using the room reverb. He basically kicked. The studio now is where he used to live, so it's he basically kicked his family out, and the drums, because it's a great sounding drum room, and so just the natural reverbs, and then getting a good thick bass tone from Tim, and then like as far as guitar tones and whatnot, we kept it pretty simple. I'm trying to remember the mics he was using and the preamps, but I can tell you that as far as like speakers go, we're using creambacks. That just seemed to work. It's that like I was alluding to earlier. It's just the trick was that keeping it organic, but yet trying to keep it keep it modern. So it does hit you a certain way. So it's not anemic. And I think that was the challenge sonically with this record, to make sure that We checked that box because we didn't want to if we go too far one way or the other, then you're going to get into like this kind of, I want it to be described as thick and having a certain intensity that kind of hits you over the head, as opposed to something that's like, well, it's very organic and it's very rootsy, but it's kind of lacking on the depth. So it was trying to find that balance. A lot, yeah. I mean, since I'm from that vicinity, even though Spokane is, we're like 250 miles away. It's about a 5-hour drive, but we were definitely influenced by everything that was happening over there, and we're very proud of everything that they did. I think one of the things that I got from that whole period was to just try and be yourself, and that was something that was very important to me. Was though I appreciated those bands and I love them, I still love them, was to try and find a way to express things my way, and that was a lot of trial and error and a lot of mistakes, a lot of missteps. But I think that one of the primary things I took away and still integrate into the process now is just making sure that the foundation, that the riff is strong and compelling, and then building that vocal on top of that. You could argue that's been that way in any number of genres of music, or especially with rock and roll. But I think for me, there's a dark quality that you tend to get from that era, like the grunge era, that I really connected with. And I think that, a song like Mr. Downside, that's a little more, to me, it's got a 90s element. So you could look at it as grunge. I mean, certainly there's that middle riff has got, very intense and kind of unexpected and hopefully unpredictable. And I think that's what I'm doing a poor job of conveying. There's a certain unpredictability that I learned from listening to those bands where you didn't know quite where it was going to go, and I always liked that. How low did you go? I think the lowest I allowed myself to go was C.
Right.
Yeah, on 2 tracks. So it would be like, I used on a song called Miss You When You're Gone, it was C, G, C, G, C, and then the top string, the thinnest string was a D. And then on, there's a song called Dead to Rights, and that's basically open G tuning, but you tune it down, you tune the thickest string down to C, right, which is kind of an interesting, I learned that from my friend Ian Thornley, who that song is kind of musically a tribute to, from a band called Big Wreck, really great band from Canada. And so when you have that open G tuning, when you think that string should be a D, but when you tune it to a C, it creates a whole different set of inspiration.
So it's like a G sus4 tuning with the sus4 on the bass.
Exactly, right? Yeah, it's
right.
Cool. Well, that one was that was one of 2 ideas that were born years ago. And I was writing for Year of the Tiger, and it was late one night, and I just stumbled onto that. I had that tuning, and I think that particular tuning was inspired by a guy named Chris Whitley, who was a big influence on, Chris was like, that was a game changer for me. And so I was like trying to find all his tunings, and that was one I got from him. And so I was messing around and came through, and it was immediately the hairs on my arms stood up, and it just kind of was handed to me like, do unto others as they do to you. It was just like, I don't know where it came from, but I knew it was one of those moments like, okay, this is one of those things you gotta be precious with, because this could be a good one. And but I knew it didn't fit in the context of the record I was working on. So I was like, I'll save this and I'll use it some other day. And I chased that one down for years and years, till I finally felt like, okay, all the parts are on par with that intro part, and then we were off to the races. It really depends on the track. Sometimes the universe will just drop something into your lap. I'm pretty prolific at starting things. Like if you said, I want you to sit down this afternoon and I want you to put together 3 songs, I'd probably be able to do that. But the problem is I have an editing system that I like to use in terms of distance. So if I come up with something, I like to get away from it. And I don't want to finish it on the spot because I want to make sure that, like we were talking about earlier with Miss You When You're Gone, that all the parts are up to par with the other parts. So it's like, oh, that's a great verse. And then you get to the chorus and it's like, you can do better. You should search for a different chorus. So that's where the time comes in. It's just, I need to step away. Oh, yeah. In fact, we have the same birthday.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Jimi Hendrix and Bruce Lee, which I'm so very honored, November 27th. And when he would have turned 50, my band, the Mayfield Four at the time, so this was in the mid to late 90s, and it was when I was turning 27, I think. We were asked to play. His family was putting on something at a club in Seattle, so a bunch of bands showed up to like do play a song. So we did Spanish Castle Magic. So some of his relatives were in the audience. So that was an honor. That was really cool. I love Hendrix. Like, Hendrix was. Obviously he was. I would just sit here and gush. But on that particular track, basically taking those minor chords and then embellishing with that ninth on there, boom, that's a very Hendrixy thing, where you're taking a triad and then putting that ninth on there and hammering it on, pulling it off. It's very Little Wing.
Yeah,
that's my favorite Hendrix jam right there. A lot of the Hendrix stuff I learned when I was a guitar teacher, and I'd have students that would bring in Hendrix stuff and I'd transpose it for them. So it was great because I was getting paid to become a better guitar player, And I had one student in particular that was obsessed with this kid. He was obsessed with Hendrix, and he'd find all these live things, and he'd want the full on. He'd come in for week after week after week, and we transposed these songs, and it really helped me. It helped me kind of learn some of his language. Yeah. Well, that's really nice to hear. I mean, the feel is paramount for me. I mean, I try. Accuracy is important, but to me, not at the expense of feel. And I think that's why I love Jimmy Page, because Jimmy his feel is a certain way. It just it's that swagger. It's that thing. I like players that do. I like accuracy, and I do my best to get it in the way it needs to be. But if you're to put a knife to my neck and say you're going to pick between vibe and being spot on, I'm going to pick vibe. But the nice thing about being in the studio is you can spend some time when you hear that it's just not quite. It's got the vibe, but there's a little too much reckless abandon there. Then you got to rein it in. So, I'm not going to sit here and say I played the whole thing one take live. I definitely. But with that said, we were not. It was not the situation where we're lining stuff up on a grid, and it was like you're going to play it. That's I appreciate about Elvis. He's like, you know what? Play it again. We're not going to fix this in Pro Tools and all that nonsense. You're going to do it. You're a human being. You can play this, and let's get this right. So that was really, really paramount. That it wasn't just a quantized, perfect, soulless record. Exactly the same as what was in the studio. It will be, it's going to be that Argo pedal. It's going to be, I have a chicken soup pedal. That's another drive pedal I use. And a handful of other little accoutrements. But that diesel Paul amp into the diesel 212 cabinet with the cream back. And my PRS signature guitars. And that's it. Pretty simple. Maybe a few acoustics here and there. Yeah, and that was part of the honor of doing this guitar with them, is that they, instead of them saying, okay, we have this guitar in our lineup, and we're gonna, what color do you want? And we're gonna put your name on the headstock. It was like, look, we don't have a T-style, and we know you love T-styles, so let's put our heads together and come up with something. So we spent 2 years, trial and error. Different versions. I mean, where it started to where it ended, it was very different. But in the process, I learned a ton. I had a blast with Paul and Rich and Bev and everybody there. It was like it became this like adhesive. It was a very bonding experience. Because when we all felt like we'd gotten something right, it was palpable. It's like when Paul called after he sent one version of the first bridge pickup, and it was good, but it wasn't, quite right. And then I was like, hey, let's try, maybe go back to the drawing board. And then he did it again. And it was funny because when he was like, hey, we got it, I can't wait till you hear this. And he was like practically jumping through the phone. That's the thing about Paul, he gets so excited. It's infectious. And so when it showed up, I was like, yeah, Paul, you're spot on, man. That's it. It really is great. And with Rich and I had a really great time. Rich Hannon, he was such an important part of the process as well. And we really spent a lot of time trying to make sure that we got, the neck right and the shape. I remember they would send guitars, and I would put them on a wall right next to our TV, and I would just stare at them. And then it's kind of the same thing I do with songwriting, where it's like I would get away from it and then come back and look with fresh perspective, and go, okay, those dimensions look right, or that looks wonky, and then call up and they'd be totally cool with it, and they were like, okay, we're going to get this right, and they did. So for me, just having the opportunity to work with one of the most important guitar manufacturers in the history of the game and develop something that didn't exist, be part of developing something that didn't exist, was kind of like I was actually just thinking about this earlier today, and it's like one of the most, it's one of the high points for this whole journey for me. It's like, wow. And I feel like I really made some good friends in the process. I love those guys. I'm counting the days. Yeah, I mean, once this press runs over, I'm going to be at home, just woodshedding every day, running the songs over and over and over. It's, because we're going out as a three-piece, that's a lot of, it's a lot of pressure in a good way, and I like the challenge, but it just means, I'm going to have to get all these songs to where they're just second nature. I'm just going to rehearse and rehearse and rehearse. And I think that's something I learned a lot of that concept through playing with like Slash, who's, when he's getting ready for a tour, he plays those songs over and over and over, and just makes it so that it becomes like an instinct where you don't have to think about it. And that's something that I watched and learned over the years, and was like, okay, because I used to be one of these guys where I didn't want to overdo it, wanted to keep it fresh. And then I realized, there's too many room for mistakes. Because when you get on stage and you've got like that adrenaline, nerves, and if that stuff isn't just burned into your brain to where you don't have to think about it, it's a disaster waiting to happen.
Because there's a lot of pressure on you because you're singing as well.
Right.
And so
oh yeah, it's totally this.
There's nowhere to hide.
There's nowhere to hide. And I'm cursing myself with some of the songs because I wrote the riffs a certain way, thinking, oh, it's just going to be a guitar riff here. But then we got in the studio, and I was like, and I listened back through the playback. I was like, it needs a vocal part right here. I'm going to have to come with a vocal part I can sing and play at the same time. But sometimes you're like, the vocal part needs to be different. And then you're like, I'll figure it out. And now I'm like, there's a vocal on the song called "Saving Face," and the riff starts da 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 ba da da ba da, but the vocal part is like da 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 da, and I'm trying to play that and sing at the same time. I was like cursing myself. Why didn't you just sing the guitar riff or something? But no, you had to do something completely different. So damn you, Kennedy.